This video is brought to you by War Thunder. More on them later. Today we're going to try and complete everything the best ROM hack of all time, Radical Red, has to offer. I'm talking completing the Pokédex, which is over 1,000 Pokemon for me to get. Going up against the Pokemon League rematch battle after defeating the entire post-game this game has to offer, and getting myself a 3-star trainer card, which is the highest you can get in Radical Red, which signifies that you're a real Pokemon master. This is going to take an insane amount of time and effort, so if you want to support the video, please don't forget to leave a like. And without any further ado, let's see if we can 100% Radical Red. And so the unknown trainer Zwigman started his adventure together with his fierce rival, Bob. As my starting settings, I went with regular mode because this allows you to get the most Pokemon, and I also turned on minimal grinding mode so that I don't have to worry about stuff like EVs and IVs. After picking the Paldea starter trio and saying goodbye to my mom, I met the man I was going to devote the rest of my life for, Professor Oak. He had a task for me of completing the Pokédex and capturing over 1,000 Pokemon to try and achieve his life's dream. But little did I know that his grandson was after the same objective. So I quickly picked up a little ducky and challenged Bob to my very first Pokemon battle. A spam battle of pounds and tackles, and because of my Oranberry, I eventually came out on top and even earned my first little bit of cash. After walking away and telling me he will always try to stand in my way, Oak decided to give me another objective: go and grab his parcel from the Pokemart and bring it back to him. As this was done, we got ourselves 10 Pokeballs to capture our first couple of species with. Starting around Pokemon like Pidgey, Poochyena, and Meowth were quickly captured before moving on to the TGTV guy, whose grumpy ass is no longer blocking the road. A little later, we unlocked the Dixnaf, one of the best features in Radical Red. It allows you to search for specific Pokemon in the grass so you don't have to just walk around back and forth finding the one you need. After bringing my duck out for some fresh air, I went back to the Pokemart and spent all my money on Pokeballs, which is actually going to be a huge problem in early game because money doesn't really grow on trees until you unlock raid dens. I went back to Pallet Town because there's actually a console in your room that you can give codes into to make your life a little easier. So I entered the code DEXALL, which unlocks all Pokemon on the Dixnaf, which is going to save me a huge amount of time in the long run. But don't worry, because I still have to capture every single Pokemon, which is going to take a very long time. And so I quickly finished up capturing all the Pokemon on Route 1, which were Pansear, Seedot, Rattata, Scraggy, and Hoothoot. All the rest I already got. Viridian City also got its Pokemon captured quickly before I moved on to another fight with Bob, where my Ducky wing attacked through a bird and a toad. Once he was defeated, we also captured the Pokemon on this route, which consisted of some pretty cool ones like Alolan Sandshrew. But at this particular time, I was playing at night, and there's actually different encounters for almost every single round, whether you're playing at the day or in the night. So I had to play at different times of the day in order to grab all the Pokemon I needed. My travels led me to Viridian Forest, where we met up with another kid that wanted to be my rival, Brendan. He's also ready to go and challenge Brock at the Pewter City Gym, but first needs to know if we have what it takes. So just like with Bob, we wing attack the Crawfish and Gecko to easily win and get myself a stat scanner. A useless item in minimal grinding mode, but at least it allows you to check how certain Pokemon evolve. At this point, I've also ran out of Pokeballs and money, so I need to go around Viridian Forest to defeat every trainer to try and get some of that juicy cash. Little did I know that I would have the longest battle in this entire run this early on, with Lass Anne and her stupid Audino that loves to just stall you out for hours upon hours because you're not prepared for it. I somehow managed to scrape by with 1 HP on Seedot to defeat her Clefairy, who was using Metronome and getting moves like Magmastorm and Psyshock, but was rewarded handsomely with my first 2 evolutions, Nuzleaf and Fluffy, and also an Infinite Repel to try and keep those pesky bugs away. Once we reached Pewter City, we bought some more balls and threw them at creatures, getting Pokemon like Mankey, Morlul, and everything the forest had to offer. Basically all critters and crawlies. Radical Red also added a pretty cool new section to the forest that will be explored a lot later on. For now though, we just grabbed the TM for Electroweb there, captured a Cottonee cotton candy pony, and an Inkeda that upon evolution will even give us 2 dex entries, Shedinja and Ninjask. Everything up until this point is captured now, so I headed over to the museum to challenge Faulkner. And apparently the only thing you need is a rapid spinning Phanpy who then starts spamming rollout to take down Flittle, Watchroll, and Rowlet, knocking all 3 birds out with just 1 stone. Speaking of stones, Brock absolutely loves those, and I love crushing them, so it's 69 funny Pokemon by my side, and around 1 hour played, I challenged the man himself. Phanpy put in a ton of work again, taking out Onix and Varoom with Magnitudes. Then all we had to do was bring in Quaxley to take out the remaining Arcan and Alolan Geodude with Aqua Jets. Getting my first gym badge incredibly quickly, which allows me to buy more Pokeballs with the money I got from Brock, including Pewter City where I grabbed Pokemon like Alolan Grimer, Skidoo, Starly, Execute, and many more. And inside of Diglett's Cave I also grabbed everything from the Mario Mushrooms to the Flying Bats, and even Pokemon like Sandile that will eventually become crucial to my team. I also go back to Pewter City to complete a battle puzzle where you have to defeat a team full of level 100 Shedinjas, which are level 5 Pokemon, and this basically just comes down to Sturdy with Stealth Rock and then taking the rest of the Pokemon out or Ruskim from Gibble. You then get rewarded with the Pokefile, which lets you heal up your team 6 times in between Pokecenter visits, which makes your trip along Kanto a lot more convenient. I finally headed on to Route 3 and onward, where I grabbed my Dynamax band from one of the professor's aides, picked up some stray Pokemon like Litleo, Nidoran, Spearow, Ekans, Nickit, Glameow, and Fletchling, which ultimately gave my starter enough experience to evolve into Quaxwell. The same route, there's also a Raiden where I grabbed a Nidoran male, which is normally only available in the day, but this was my first Raiden, so it's definitely an experience I wanted to remember. After throwing in another wishing piece, I also grabbed a Capsicid here, and on Route 4, which has a couple of grass patches just before Mount Moon as well, I found Pokemon like Mounsehold, Pumpkaboo, Stunky, Pachirisu, Oddish, Rookidee, and Pidove. I then entered the Cave of Dune, Mount Moon, and made my way through to the fossil immediately and grabbed the Dome one. Not that it really matters, cause you can get both in the wild. But here's a question for you: if you could make a fossil Pokemon out of any dinosaur, which one would it be? Leave it in the comments down below. In Mount Moon, there's also 3 different areas where you can find encounters in, so I found Pokemon like Tympole, Dunsparce, Tyrogue, which I actually needed to grab 3 of in order to get Hitmonlee, Hitmontop, and Hitmonchan. I even got some other cool encounters like Riolu, Shieldon, and Sock on these nuts. But the crown jewel was definitely Tinkatink, who is eventually going to turn into Tinkaton, which is always a powerhouse to have. Fake Out and Gigaton Hammer, this thing is going to shred. As I was trying to leave the cave though, Archer came up to me, a Team Rocket executive that was here to pick up some of the fossils we stole. He isn't too happy about that and sent his rabid dog to attack me. I let him get off a couple of howls, which was a mistake on my part, making him able to kill 2 of my Pokemon, but then my Alolan Ductrio was able to clean the rest off with Magnitudes. So we part ways and he says that this isn't the last we'll see from him. We eventually reach Cerulean City, where I look in my box and see that a lot of Pokemon that I've captured are holding items. That's always something you have to look out for in Radical Red, because Pokemon could actually be holding some decent stuff, like shards that you can later on exchange for Pokemon eggs. Now my next challenge is going to be the gym leader Misty, so I started building a team that would easily be able to take care of her, and that's what I really like about this challenge, because normally I'm playing Radical Red with these restrictions of only being able to use a single type or whatever, but now I can really build a team for every single fight and try to make it as smooth as possible for myself, which is definitely one of the beauties of this game, because every Pokemon is basically viable. For this battle specifically, I picked up Gloom, Shiinotic, and Raichu. We're now at a Pokedex total of 121 with 2 hours of game time, which means we're about 1/9 of the way there, which is crazy to think about. The fight with Swimsuit Misty though was actually pretty easy once Shiinotic took down Starmie with Sleep Powder and Mega Drain, then put Clodsire to sleep, then Gloom could come in, set up a couple of growths, and keep the Clodsire asleep with Sleep Powders while healing up with Mega Drain. Once the Big Mouth Bastard was done, the last 2 Pokemon, Floatzel and Frogadier, fell shortly after, giving me my 2nd gym badge easily. The next gym leader I was going to face was Search, so I already evolved Sandile into Crocodile, but I still had a couple more things to do before we reached him, so I challenged my rival Bob just in front of the Nugget Bridge. As it turns out, out, all you need is a Galarian Rapidash with Fire Lash to finish off Kirlia, Staravia, and Ivysaur before Barnyard puts an end to your antics with a cut, but that little guy bit the dust soon after. As a reward, Bob gives me the ability to fly, basically turning me into Homelander. Yeah, I've been watching The Boys lately, and I'm honestly loving the show. But enough about that, because I completed another battle puzzle in Cerulean City, giving me access to the Move Reminder. This way I can always rebuild my Pokemon's movesets just before a fight, which adds another deep layer of team building. I then captured a Lodrat from a raid den, 2 Charcadets for Armarouge and Ceruledge, but also 2 Aralsis for Gallade and Gardevoir. Pokemon like Murkrow were here too, which added a lot to the dex total. But none of this was as much fun as seeing a human who had turned himself into a Pokemon beg me to turn him back. So you know, for the right price of an incredibly expensive cruise ticket, we decided to turn him back, and even got rid of the pesky raid den that was just outside of his house that allowed me to capture Clauncher. You're probably wondering why the ground's shaking right now, and that's because of today's sponsor, War Thunder. Quite literally the best vehicle combat game you will ever see in your life. You want to play with a tank from 1925 or a plane that came out in 2010? Well, they've basically got it all. These wars aren't just small scale, as over 70 million players have already entered and fought many battles aside their comrades. You're probably wondering something like this will cost you $60 or more, but I'm here to tell you it's for free. And if you're somewhat into military history, you're going to love everything about this game. The huge immersion it gives you with the authentic sound effects, graphics, and vehicles are really going to make you feel like you're actually in the battle. And these aren't just made regularly and quick, no, they put a ton of time and effort into designing these vehicles by modeling them down to their real-life counterparts with engines, fuel tanks, weapons, and so much more. You can also customize your vehicles to either make them look really cool or to try and blend in with your environment by using camouflage. There's multiple types of game modes to suit your playstyle, each one of them ramping up the realism progressively so that you can find what you like. And if one of your tanks is destroyed, you will get an impressive damage X-ray view that will show you exactly what happened and what part of your tank was destroyed. The game is heavily optimized, so you basically never experience any lag. You don't need any extra hardware, all you need is your mouse and keyboard or controller, which means easy access, which we all love, right? So what are you waiting for? Get ready to play War Thunder right now by using my link in the pinned comment or video description. And if you're a new or returning player that hasn't played in 6 months, you will also receive a massive bonus pack across all platforms that include multiple premium vehicles and the exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor. You will also receive 100,000 silver lions and 7 days of premium account action. All of this is only available for a limited time, so don't forget to claim it as fast as possible. With that out of the way, I want to thank War Thunder one last time for sponsoring today's video, and let's get right back into it. I then started the team build for my next major fight against Buxy and even evolved my Zubat into Golbat for that. Turns out I didn't even need the guy. We just needed Fire Lashes against Scizor that eventually finished off my horse with a punch that was made of bullets. Luckily, Elvis Bird quick attacked them out of here before getting walloped by a first impression from low kicks. That's when Fearow started beating everything up with its wings, as not it, Scyther, or Ledian could stand up to my bug-eating friend. You don't even get that great of a reward of beating Buxy, just a TM for U-turn and some nest balls. All I knew was that I had to use Buxy's balls to capture more Pokemon. And so I grabbed everything on the next round, including Alolan Vulpix, Spritzee, Gothita, Oricorio, Hatenna, Drifloon, Sizzlipede, Furfrou, Gossifleur, and Bounsweet before reaching Vermilion City. I then headed to the guy that gives you the rod and started fishing away, grabbing all the encounters from the city, but I also went back to previous routes to fish in ponds there. A couple notable ones were Frillish, Wimpod, and Staryu before I headed to Diglett Cave to make another mark on the Pokemon there, adding Shellos, Silicobra, Hippopotas, and Gligar all to the squad. But there's another important thing beyond Diglett Cave. This consists of a trade. You give away an Abra and normally you get a Mr. Mime, but in this game they've changed that to a popular Pokemon of a very controversial game, Palworld. Its name is Rukia, and it basically just looks like an ice-type ferret. I did play a little bit of Palworld back when it came out, but honestly haven't really touched it since. I do think this is a cool little Easter egg, and I can't wait to show you more later. I also grabbed a Paldean egg hatching into a Paldean Wooper, which would be nice for the next gym, but I'm not sure if I'm going to use him yet. I now have more than enough money to fuel my Pokeball addiction, so capturing Pokemon is not going to be a problem anymore. And so outside of Diglett Cave, I grabbed Pancham, Ducklet, Drowsy, Sigilyph, and everything else this place had to offer. I then felt this urge to relax, so I headed to the cruise that Bill got my name on the list for, and quickly found out I wasn't going to get any rest here either. Every room I entered, somebody would ambush me for a Pokemon battle, and when I tried to go and speak to the captain, my rival Brendan showed up. He wasn't here to try and chill with me either. He saw that we had 2 gym badges on us and really wanted to see how we compared to each other. And so my snowy ferret knocked out his Loudred's big-ass teeth with icicle spears. His Groudon got hit with a Mega Horn from my pony before its mains got extinguished with a waterfall. Swallow then finishes it off with a quick attack, while Lunatone goes down to a U-turn from Gligar into a quick attack from Fearow. One last dual wing beat, and Mystery Dungeon's mascot Grovyle also bites the dust, and with Brendan defeated, we get the HM for cut, which allows us to get into Lieutenant Surge's gym. After digging through his trash and finding some very questionable things, we eventually come face to face with him and see that we have a Pokédex total of 192 with a playing time of 3 hours and 40 minutes. Lieutenant Surge was definitely not easy to defeat, with Pokemon like Vikavolt, Mega Manectric, and Pawmot really shredding through my ground types, as most of them are even holding berries that will reduce the attacks of my ground type moves. In the end though, we came out victorious with a couple of bad switches on my part, but I do have to say that Mudsdale did most of the carrying. With my 3rd gym badge acquired, I made it to round 9 to grab a Tropius, Skorupi, Esper, Salandit, and all the other Gemmabalams. All the electric types on Route 10 also stood no chance against my balls, and once they were captured, we entered the famous Rock Tunnel. If you don't have the HM for Flash, it's not all that pleasant to get through here, but luckily I know my way around because I've played Fire Red and Leaf Green for like 100 times already. I was even able to grab everything this cave had to offer, from Aron to Lunatone, and even ice types like Sneasel, Cryogonal, and Bergmite showed up. After leaving the cave, we got to Lavender Town, which kind of sent a shiver down my spine with all of the ghosts and all, but on not so famous Route 11 we got a pretty good Pokemon, Bascule Legion, out of a raid den. A great last resort Pokemon with last respects if everything else fails. But I wasn't done there, because I still had to pillage the rest of the route, grabbing Pokemon like Absol, Morgrem, and even evolving my little sand heap into a sand castle. On Route 7 I found an interesting Porygon, which should be in a PC but is now in my possession, and so we eventually reached our next destination, Celadon City. I immediately started off by picking up the tea from the old lady and also grabbing some eggs with all the shards I found so far. These eggs contain starter Pokemon, and we need to get a lot of them. Basically 9 times 3, right? I mean, we already have Quaxley, so that just leaves us with all the rest. I've only gotten red shards so far, so I was only able to get some fire type starters like Tepig, Fuecoco, Chimchar, and Cyndaquil. On the route next to the cycling road, I found a Scyther, which is going to be amazing for the next gym leader Erika, so I picked it up, evolved my Quaxwell into Quaquaval, and also captured everything else on the route, including a Fortress and a Cleavor I got from a raid den. After building my team for Erika, which included an Alola Muck and Skeledirge, I was ready to burn down the garden. We're already 5 hours in and have a Pokédex total of 265, which basically brings us up to like 1/4 of the way there. Erika then looked me in the eyes and wanted to stomp me with her big monkey, which she quickly U-turned out into a Alolan Electrode. My Skeledirge used Fire Blast to one-shot it, but her Mega Venusaur put me to sleep, which forced me out into Escavalier, who got put to sleep as well. Once Scyther came in and hit a Psycho Cut and X-Scissor, he also went down, but my Tropius' Air Slashes flinched the Venusaur and ultimately made it come out on top. I sent out my Escavalier to try and take out Rillaboom with X-Scissor, but I didn't wake up in time and was only able to hit one, which didn't do enough damage. When my Alola Muck was about to take it out with Poison Fang, however, he once again U-turned down into her shiny, beautiful purple Meganium, who unfortunately for her is a fairy grass type, so my poison type move did a ton of damage, and with another one, it fell. After doing some major damage on the incoming Meowscarada with another poison fang, we did get taken out with a triple axle, and that left my Skarmory to take out the remaining 2 Pokemon with Steel Wing, and so victory was ours, giving me my 4th gym badge, which means we're halfway to challenging the Pokemon League. So then I went back to the Pokemon Center to get healed up, but instead I got greeted by one of the professor's aides who gives you a Sevian egg. Sevian Pokemon are basically regional forms that Radical Red custom made, but you can only capture them in the post game besides of a couple of eggs you can receive in the main game. I happen to get a Sevian Blitzel, which is an ice electric type, something I will definitely be using in the future. I then traded away my Murkrow for a Chatot, another Dex encounter I needed, and went to the local casino to try and become rich because there's a person here that allows you to 10 times double your money. All you have to do is beat him in a metronome battle. You both get 6 Pokemon and you hope for the best moves, but this is basically a scam because I tried this over 10 times and only managed to win once. So if you try this yourself, definitely save in front of him so you don't go bankrupt. After this, I went to the Team Rocket hideout, did some spinning, puked under their entire floor, and finally stood eye to eye with their big boss, Giovanni. I was shivering in my boots, thinking this guy was going to destroy me. Little did I know that I was actually fully prepared. Definitely not the cleanest battle, but at least Quaquaval was able to liquidate Nidoking. Pangoro knocked off Veluza and did some decent damage to Honchkrow as well. His Mega Kangaskhan then absolutely destroyed Emolga, Sawk, and Flygon, which only left me with 2 more Pokemon, Talonflame and a almost dead duck. Talonflame proved to be a worthy adversary though, as it took down this Kangaskhan, Earthworm, and Honchkrow before Infernape finally took me down after living of its Focus Sash, but then my duck Aqua Jet out its fire on its head, and bada bing, bada boom, we're done here. We get the Silph Scope, and Giovanni runs off like a little baby. For my next opponent, I really wanted to use Tinkaton, so I evolved it and walked into the gym ready to get swole. Chuck was here to train me, and he thought he was going to absolutely destroy me. Little did he know that I only needed a Tinkaton, Scyther, and Talonflame to dual wing beat Gigaton Hammer and Brave Bird everything he had worked for. We even stole his Aqua Breed Tauros and headed out of there as fast as we could to start trick-or-treating at the Lavender Tower. Of course, the only thing we got here was ghost-type Pokemon like Koffagrigus, a teapot, a stone filled with souls of people and Pokemon, a dog that had passed away, and of course, a mother that was not so happy after losing her child. Once her rage had dialed down a bit, however, we managed to make it to the top where Team Rocket was holding a man hostage. We quickly find out that it's Mr. Fuji, an old friend of Professor Oak. So we save him and bring him back to his house to get the Pokeflute. This allows us to wake up sleeping giants that are blocking the road. But we also saw a very interesting individual in his house with a Mega Gengar by his side. His name was Morty and he used to be a gym leader in the Johto region and would love to test my strength. So I added Kingambit to my team, an insane Pokemon that's going to carry us through the rest of the game, and he's basically not going off the team anymore. Maybe for certain fights, but he's just way too good. Because every time a Pokemon faints, he gets stronger, so if you send him out at the end of the battle and just sucker punch everything that's left, you're basically cleaning up. That's what I did to Morty, as his ghost type stood no chance. Yes, his shiny Ceruledge was able to finish me off with a close combat, but we had Mandibuzz in the back with Dark Pulse, so there was really no way we were losing here. We get some pretty cool rewards after beating him, like the TM for Shadow Ball and the Sooth Bell, but because we had some very hard fights in Silph Co ready for us, I decided to prepare myself by evolving Krokorok into Crocodile, Hisuian Growlithe into Arcanine, and Toadstool into Toadskruel. We then entered the biggest cooperation of the Kanto region, where they even make Pokeballs, and defeated Bob with ease, as there's nothing that Tinkaton, Arcanine, and Kingambit can't handle. We then teamed up with my other rival Brendan to fight 2 of the main executives here, Ariana, and once again Kingambit and Tinkaton put in a huge amount of work with Sceptile. And while it was pretty cool to see a shiny silver Goldengo, the only thing I could really think about was getting that rushback of fighting their main boss and villain, Giovanni. You see, he was busy threatening the director of this company with his Garchomp, and now if he wouldn't comply, the region would be thrown into total chaos by Team Rocket. But the boy, Zwigman, stepped in just at the right moment to face Giovanni and save the region yet again. So with my newly improvised team that added in a Ferrothorn, Golisopod, and Cryogonal, I jumped in. As Toadskrull did decent damage on Hippowdon with a Giga Drain, but he was able to set up Stealth Rocks and swap out into Garchomp. After putting him to sleep, I was able to spam Giga Drain for a couple of turns, but yet again, he decided to swap out into Torterra before I could take it out. While we were able to hit 2 Giga Drains on the thing, it wasn't enough because it set up a Self Smash and killed me with Woodhammer. Golisopod could have however come in and wallop it with a first impression. Mega Kangaskhan then shredded this thing as well as my Tinkaton. Kingambit Sucker Punched it, but Excadrill was always going to win this matchup, so I swapped out into Cryogonal and used the Reflect before swapping into Ferrothorn and killing the big size mole with Power Whip. I hit another Power Whip on Garganacl before going down to Body Press, and then Kingambit could Sucker Punch this, Hippowdon, and Garchomp to defeat Giovanni. As a reward, we get a Master Ball from the man himself before he heads me into the direction of the next gym, which is right here and is led by the Psychic type leader, Sabrina. She runs a very slow Trick Room team with a Psychic Terrain up, so Kingambit's Sucker Punches are not going to come in handy here. I decide to lead off with Crocodile and Tinkaton, and with a Crunch and Gigaton Hammer, both of our first Pokemon Indeedee and Hatterene go down. Oh, and did I mention that all of her Pokemon are shiny? Because she is the equivalent of a shiny hunter in this game. Anyway, Ursaluna and Porygon 2 come in. So I use a Crunch and a knockoff on this Porygon, which does a ton of damage, but ultimately it gets the Trick Room off and they forced out my Tinkaton with a high horsepower. But with Excavalier's X-Scissor, the incoming Brood Bonnet from the teleport of Porygon 2 gets one shot as well. Another Crunch from Crocodile and Ursaluna is down too, and with only Porygon 2 remaining as well as Gardevoir, this match is done and dusted. We get ourselves the 5th gym badge and are not able to get the shiny charm from her because then you actually have to show her shiny yourself, which I personally haven't found yet. I evolved 2 Pokemon, adding Zebstrika and Hippowdon to the team, which helped me take out the Mudkip kid and get a Mudkip for myself. Hippowdon was pretty crucial here because it could change the weather from rain to sand, and we now also have access to the TM of Earthquake. We do our rematch battles with Misty, Brock, and Lieutenant Surge to get some Mega Stones and TMs that are going to be useful to us later, and then we walked all the way to the piers that are Route 12. This is where we yeeted the Snorlax into the sea, and I found out that they actually do float. But Route 12 and 13 are also infested with incredibly hard and very many trainer battles, and even if you manage to get past all of those, I still had to capture the Pokemon here, which consisted of a ton of Ice types on Route 12 and Fire and Grass types on Route 13, including a Bulbasaur and Charmander, but also Duraludon. Don't know why he's here, but I don't think he's supposed to fit in with Fire and Grass types. Fuchsia City then had another plan up its sleeve for me. Another Sevian egg, which turned out to be a Mantike, Poison and Electric type that I'll probably never use, but I do like its design. And after evolving my newly acquired Charmander into Charizard, I was ready for the next battle against Koga, who you can basically call the Flash in this game because his team is full of speed. And if we check up on our Pokédex total and time, we're now 8 hours in and have 333, which means we're 1/3 of the way there, so let's keep on grinding. I took Relicanth with me for one reason and one reason only, taking out Swallow with a Head Smash. Once that was done, Mega Toxtricity whooped my fish's ass, and the Alolan Duck trio used Earthquake to take it down. Drapion hit me with a Wicked Blow, so Tinkaton had to come in, use Fake Out, Gigaton Hammer, and Play Rough to force out the Iron Valiant. We stood no chance here, so Bruxish had to come in and Psychic Fangs before Kingambit could finish off the final 2 Pokemon, Ash Greninja and a Selgor with Sucker Punch. I got my gym badge, showed him my fastest Pokemon Talonflame, and got a Life Orb and Toxtricity-eyed as my rewards. I picked up some medicine from a local nurse and brought it to Erika because her Gloom is sick. When she gave it and got better, we also defeated her in an easy rematch battle that gave me one of the best rewards ever, an Ogerpon, one of the new DLC Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet that has 3 masks to change typings and is just incredibly broken. We also defeat Brendan in front of the Safari Zone again without much trouble and honestly without even changing my team around much. As our our reward, we get the HM for Rock Smash, which is needed in order to get a ton of legendary Pokemon that have now been unlocked to us. But first, there is something way more important we have to go and do, and that is capture all the Pokemon in the Safari Zone. We did some insane captures here. Chansey, Iron Hands, Meltan, Tauros, Hawlucha, Zoroark, Kangaskhan, Gimmighoul, Sandyshock, Screamtail, Iron Thorns, and it just kept on going until we got that HM for Surf, which unlocked a secret area of the Safari Zone that is exclusive to Radical Red. And I immediately found this raid then that was emitting an energy that was stronger than anything I have seen before. And that's because there was 3 legendary Pokemon in there: Okidoki, Mungidori, and Pheasantipity, the trio of the Teal Mask DLC. After defeating and capturing all 3 of them, I found yet another legendary, only this time it was Moltres, just standing in the middle of this field as it saw me approaching it. Of course, we added this to the dex total as well, but there was more to this part of the Safari Zone. Munchlax, Hydrapple, Eternal Flower Floette, and because I've just unlocked the Surf ability, we can also grab every water type, so Milotic, Crawdon, Floatzel, Seadra, and basically anything that might be living in your bathtub at home. Once I was done in the Safari Zone, I headed over to the Seafoam Islands, obviously capturing everything in the sea, but eventually running into a legendary trainer named Price. After making all of his Pokemon crumble and melt into tin pieces of ice and water, we were rewarded with a Choice Scarf, an item that's going to make me incredibly speedy. So let's zoom through the Seafoam Islands, capture all the ice types and water types we can grab in here, the best ones being Slowbro, Beartic, and Piloswine, but inside of a raid den I also found Dracovish, which is going to pair great with the Choice Scar we just got. We all know what shredded everything with Fish's Rend back in the Sword and Shield era. After saving in front of Articuno, I found out that I'm over the 400 Pokedex total right now, and we're also closing in on the 10-hour mark. But after capturing the Icy Bird, I quickly found out that this wasn't the only legendary in this cave, as Keldeo showed up shortly after. The leader of the Swords of Justice was happy to join my team, and with a full heart, I could leave these icy islands alone for a while. And you may think, isn't it time to go and challenge Blaine at Cinnabar Island now? Well, I say no. After defeating Koga and getting the HM for Surf, a ton of raid dens have been reworked to basically grant you access to a ton of legendary spawns. So let me walk you through a couple ones that I got. On Route 2, I managed to defeat Entei, Suicune, and Raikou and capture all 3 of the legendary beasts. I then received a phone call from Bill saying that he has yet another infestation in front of his house. So we cleared it of Celebi, Calyrex, and Necrozma before going to Viridian Forest to grab yet another one of the Swords of Justice, only this time it was Virizion. The raid den here also held some Pokemon that I didn't have yet, like Golurk and Gourgeist. After this, I finally went to Cinnabar Island, and as we try to enter the abandoned mansion, Brendan's girlfriend May runs into us. But with my newly acquired Necrozma, I basically Photon Geyser more than half of her team, while Tinkaton bonks the rest of them on the head. Inside the mansion, we grab yet another batch of Pokemon, including Galarian Weezing, Chimecho, Banette, Garbodor, Mightyena, and Magmar, before picking up the secret key and heading to Blaine's gym to open it up. We don't get greeted with a battle, however, we get greeted with something even worse: trivia questions. My small brain doesn't even know how many times a Poliwag evolves, apparently. I mean, he has 3 evolutions, right? Poliwhirl, Poliwrath, and Politoed? Anyway, let's battle the bald man. We all know he runs a sun team, so you always have to try and counter that out with some kind of weather setter. So I used Pelipper after taking down his shiny Armarouge with Fish's Rends from Dracovish. From there on, Executor's Chlorophyll ability was totally crippled, so he could basically not do anything. After we blow it out of here with a single Hurricane, Sucker Punches from King Ambit, and Fish's Rends from Dracovish easily won me the battle. Let's do a quick check-in on how we're doing. We're 479 Pokemon deep with about 10 hours of playtime. We're reaching that halfway mark, but we still have a lot of work to do. So I traveled back to Route 11 to grab Yuxi and Azelf there. But after this, I ran out of wishing pieces, which means we're going to have to grind for more or wait a couple of days before we can try again. Either way, I went to the power plant to grab all the electricity from there, including Electrodes, Magnetrons, Manectrics, Vikavolt, you know, the whole electric shalangabang. But like every other odd location, there is more legendary Pokemon to be found, so we grabbed Thunderbird and headed back to Viridian City with hopes high to go and challenge the 8th gym leader. Little did I know that Brendan needed my help back at Cerulean Cave, otherwise the entire region might be in grave danger. I didn't know what was waiting for me in that cave, but when we entered, I saw that it was once again Team Rocket and their shady business. What were they up to now? We were about to find out. Of course, not without capturing everything in this cave first, from parasects to pukimukus to type gnolls. This cave had a lot of variety in it for me, as in one of the raidens, I also managed to capture myself a Zerka a Pokemon that might not even be a Pokemon because it's out of this universe, but let me tell you that its special attack is through the roof. And so with this heap of Christmas lights, I managed to shock both of the admins and made my way to the deepest parts of this cave. Here we see Giovanni in the middle of a showdown with a Pokemon we've never seen before, genetically made by himself and his team. It's named Mewtwo. He says it's over for us as he catches it in a Master Ball. But just when we're about to clash, Lance shows up and tells me to pick 3 Pokemon to fight by his side. It took some time, but I decided to go with Tinkaton, Mega Sableye, and Dracovish. We started off great by taking down the Tapu Lele and Scrafty with the Play Rough and Spirit Shackle. But then the big threats came in, Excadrill and Mewtwo. While we were able to take down Mewtwo, it immediately Mega evolved into its Y form, giving it an extra life. Tinkaton went down shortly after, but we weren't done yet. As we brought in Sableye, Dragapult decided to take down the Mewtwo with another Spirit Shackle. This left him with only 3 Pokemon. Tyranitar came out next. And while my Mega Sableye was basically not able to do anything, Dracovish on the other hand killed Excadrill while Dialga finished off Tyranitar. This only left him with Celesteela left, and with just a single Fish's Rend and a hit from Dialga, Giovanni was defeated earlier rather than later. After the battle though, Giovanni's admins come and scream at him to stop this madness, as they're really loyal to him and they could turn their life around if they just found something they're good at besides doing any criminal stuff. All of these kind words touch Giovanni, and so he releases Mewtwo back into the cave, and we get out of there as fast as possible as it spurs out into a rage. As we finally make it outside, Giovanni tells Ariana and Archer that they're going to try and make an honest living out of all this, as Team Rocket gets disbanded and hopefully turns into something good. Lance is willing to give them all a second chance, but he's definitely going to keep an eye on them. And once we get the Mega Stones of Mewtwo and Salamence, we also part ways with everyone, because we have more Pokemon to capture and one last gym badge to get. So we head back into Cerulean Cave and capture everything I might have missed, including some cool ones like Noivern, Great Tusk, Iron Thorns, and I even managed to defeat an incredibly powerful black belt that gave me a Cup Fu as a reward, which I can evolve into either one of the Urshifus. Now, in order to prepare for my final gym battle against Claire, I decided to add Archaludon to my team, but also Melmetal, which is a Pokemon I'm super excited to use because it's really overpowered in this ROM hack. On the other hand, I also went and picked up a Focus Sash from Chuck, Choice Picks from Blaine, and an Ossault Vest from Jasmine. And with the Rapid Strike version of Urshifu by my side, Claire was my next target. It immediately started putting in work as well, taking down Aerodactyl and the incoming Gouging Fire with Surging Strikes. But whoever would have thought that Urshifu would get hit by a meteor as it was taken down. My newly acquired Great Tusk then went incredibly hard, taking this thing down as well as Magearna and the incoming shiny Roaring Moon. And while her last Pokemon Dragonite took me down easily, Tinkaton could come in and just play rough it to get me my final gym badge. But we still had a couple of things to do before we could challenge the Pokemon League. One of them was beating my rival Bob again. And who would have known that a Mega Charizard Y was all you needed to take down more than 50% of his team? I mean, the rest of them went down by the hands of Tinkaton and King Ambit, but this battle was a joke compared to what we've already seen and what's about to come. And I don't mean this Brendan battle that got absolutely walloped by Urshifu and Melmetal. No, I'm talking everything past this, so we have to prepare ourselves. So I went into Victory Road and captured so many awesome Pokemon. Iron Valiant, all the pseudo legendaries you could hope for, Paradox Pokemon, and even a Meloetta and Genesect from a raid den, but the creme de la creme was Walking Wake, my favorite Paradox Pokemon and honestly one of my favorite Pokemon of all time. So I was incredibly stoked to see him standing there in the middle of Victory Road, waiting for me to capture it. I had a little bit more preparing to do before we went and challenged the league, so I went back to the Haunted Mansion and captured a Hoopa there. Once again, out of a raid trade den. If you then head upstairs, there is a Zoroark blocking the way, and if you use your Silph Scope on it, you get into this new area. There's some Pokemon here that you cannot capture anywhere else, like the starters, Meganium, Quaquaval, and Empoleon, but also unknown. Then you're required to complete a Mewtwo statue puzzle, which leads you to yet another insane encounter, Gouging Fire. Defensive beast that's going to lead my way into the Pokemon League. You better be sure of that. Also because I've kind of never really used them before. And now we only need one more to complete the Paradox Trio, so I headed over to Silph Co. And in the lobby, in the bottom right corner, there's a teleport pad that leads you to this puzzle filled with spin pads. Once you get through it, however, you're rewarded very handsomely with a Raging Bolt, one of the coolest Pokemon you'll ever see. Now with those preparations ready, I started building my team, which consisted of Mega Charizard Y, Melmetal, Kingambit, Xurkitree, Toxapex, and Gouging Fire. I started off by facing Lorelei's Ice-type team, so I led off with Charizard and Melmetal, and Mega evolved immediately to set up the Sun and kill Glaceon, while Melmetal used Double Iron Bash to kill Ninetales. Rodon Wash and Mega Abomasnow came in, and while they were able to take down my Charizard, I still finished off their Abomasnow as well and hit another move on that Rotom. After Calyrex came in, it became pretty easy because Melmetal took that thing out with Double Iron Bash. I shocked the washing machine with a Thunderbolt and superpowered that Godzilla, and boom, we're on to Bruno. And I found it really interesting that he had a blue shiny Infernape. Cool or not, we're still shocking it out of here, and I was even able to take down his shiny Zacian with Thunderbolts from Xurkitree as well. After I hit one more on Kamo O, my path of destruction was finally over, and so Mega Charizard Y air slashed it, Scorched Iron Valiant, and Urshifu. Then I was at way too low health for the final Pokemon Mega Lucario, so Gouging Fire hit a Flare Blitz, and that lets us move on to Agatha. And this battle basically started off the same as the last one, Thunderbolting the first two Pokemon with Xurkitree, but then the Roaring Moon resisted my Thunderbolt, survived, and finished me off. Melmetal then finished it off with Double Iron Bash, while Charizard could come in on the incoming Goldengo to melt it down into a gold bar so I can sell it on the black market. And while the Mega Gengar went down easily by a Flamethrower and a Sucker Punch from Charizard and Kingambit, Marshadow turned out to be a different breed. You see, I accidentally clicked Dragon Rush with my Gouging Fire, and I was Choice Banded, so I couldn't really go into another move, so I missed 4 of them in a row and went down. Luckily, Toxapex was still here to liquidate it, which just scrapes us by to go and defeat Lance, the Dragon Master. Xurkitree once again does a great job at taking down Aerodactyl with Thunderbolt. Somehow my Charizard is able to take on the God of Time Primal Dialga with Flamethrowers. His purple shiny Salamence gets Ice Punched in the face by my hunk of gears, Melmetal gets Flare Blitzed by Gouging Fire, and Kingambit is there to clean up Dragonite and Iron Hoogalis. Now normally we would be champion, but as it turns out, my good old rival Bob has reached this place before we could, so it's time to see how strong he's become since our last battle, and if we can become champion with this team. I first set up a layer of Toxic Spikes with Toxapex on the Pheromosa and also used Baneful Bunker to poison it. It U-turns out into Eternatus, and I set up another layer of Toxic Spikes. I swap in Melmetal and hit a single Earthquake before going down to Flamethrower, and then I take it down with Sucker Punch from Kingambit. Shiny Miraidon comes in, and I decide to let my Kingambit go down and then stall it out with Poison with Gouging Fire and Toxapex. Yveltal then hits the field, and I outrage with Gouging Fire before going down to Dark Hole. Xurkitree hits yet another Thunderbolt to take it out, and also hits one on the incoming Metagross before getting taken out. Charizard can then finish it off, but loses the battle against an imposter Ditto. I only have one more Pokemon remaining as Toxapex uses Liquidation and recovers to let me become champion of the Kanto region. And while normally my journey would end here, now we're checking out what the rest of Radical Red has to offer me, as I'm very eager to find out. First thing I do when I'm back in Paladin is go to Professor Oak to show him my collection of Pokemon. We've so far captured 538 out of the 1026, so I'd say we're about halfway through. I also only just realized you can unlock a time changer in the lab after completing a little quiz with one of the assistants, so I did that as well, which would have been a lot better if I'd gotten it earlier. But hey, better now than never, I suppose. Then in order to unlock the Tri-Pass so that I can go to the Sevii Islands, this fortune-telling lady tells you where to go. She says that I still have a worthy adversary waiting for me at the power plant, so I head over there, and it seems to be a JoJo fan. He says the iconic line, "Oh, you're approaching me? Instead of running away, you're coming right to me? Oh, then come as close as you like." As we start another clash, he leads off with a Hoopa Unbound form, which is something you don't see very often, so I set up a layer of toxic spikes and swap in King Amit to hit the sucker punch, but because of a focus sash, it survives and punches me to death with a drain punch. Gouging Fire proceeds to take down Simisear with Earthquake, Charizard flamethrowers his Celebi, we also double Iron Bash on the rock type Ogerpon, and kill the last two Pokemon Aegislash and Mega Machamp with Thunderbolts from Xurkitree. And so we managed to get the Cornerstone Mask, but also there's new legendaries in the power plant now, so we grab a Regieleki from the Raid Den and a Galarian Zapdos where the regular Zapdos normally needs to be. The last thing I have to do is pick up the Mega Gengarite from Morty back in Lavender Town, and this lets me get the Tri-Pass. Now I would say the real post-game would finally start, but first I evolve my Haunter into a Gengar and give him the moves Hypnosis and Mean Look. This is important to capture all the roaming legendary Pokemon because there is a ton of them. I'm talking Terrapagos, the Genie Trio and the Beads of Ruin Quartet, and lastly the Eon Duo Latios and Latias. It did take me quite a while to track all of these down, but absolutely worth it because this got me more than 10 new Dex entries. I also grabbed the 2 remaining Swords of Justice in Rock Tunnel and Mount Moon and headed back to the Seaform Islands to grab Glacier and Galarian Articuno. And am I the only one who thinks this, but are the Galarian forms just 10 times better than the Cantonian ones? With this out of the way, I finally headed to Vermilion City Port and took the first boat to one island where I meet my new rival, the JoJo fan. I was expecting somebody like Silver or, you know, anybody else, but no. This guy is here. And once you defeat him in yet another Pokemon battle, he gives you the Z-Ring so we can now use Z moves. Which I honestly think is kind of crazy that they locked this behind post-game content, but hey, we're going to probably never use this anyway. But once we enter the Pokemon Center here, we see that the big machine that Celio is normally operating and wants you to get the Ruby and Sapphire for is now fully operational and has been changed to a battle simulator. The more battles you win in a row against some of the hardest battles you've faced in the past, the more battle points you're going to receive. These battle points can then be used to either buy Z Crystals, Master Balls, and even a Necrozmasizer and a Cosmog. And while I don't want to jump into it immediately, we're going to have to come back here to get that Cosmog Pokédex entry either way. So I finally started journeying the islands and captured Pokemon like Electros and Grimmsnarl, but also I finally found some of the Sevian forms like Centiskorch, who is now a ground type, and I'm not gonna lie, I absolutely love this guy. But we also ended up facing Buxy here again, and after we took him down, we got the Beginium Z and also a Pinsir with the move Extreme Speed, which is insane once you evolve it and he gets Aerialate. In Mount Ember, we picked up some fire types we had never seen before, and just before we reach the peak, we see that Ariana is here too. I'm immediately thinking they're up to something bad again, but it seems like they're actually just investigating if Moltres is still here. But he's obviously been changed around to the Safari Zone, which means there must be a Pokemon that replaces it here. After defeating her, we find out that Archer is on top of the hill as well. He really just wanted to see how strong we had really become, and while they had some pretty good Pokemon like Heatran and Latias on their teams, these battles just came out to be nothing compared to the champion battle against Bob. Once they're defeated, they explain that they're just here on the Sevii Islands to look into legendary Pokemon, because apparently there's quite a few around. Giovanni was somewhere around here too, looking for his son Silver. They've managed to find each other on the Sevii Islands, but are now going to Naval Rock to see if Ho-Oh and Lugia are there too. So maybe we'll see them around later, but for now we're going to have to say goodbye to Ariana and Archer, but as a parting gift, we do get an Aerodactyl with the exclusive move Brave Bird, which pairs great with its Rock Head ability. We then get a chance at capturing Heatran, which we successfully do, and this basically concludes all of our business on the first island. So we go to island number 2 and go to a shop that sells wishing pieces. So now we can keep doing raid dens without having to worry about having to wait a day. Whitney also resides on this island, and once you beat her in a rematch Ultimate Team battle, you get the Normalium Z, but she had nothing of interest on her team. No legendary legendaries, nothing that should give anybody trouble, so we left her alone and saw what the rest of the island had to offer us. Mainly Pokemon encounters like Shiftry, Morpeko, and Hisuian Lilligant, but also a major trainer battle against someone with a Galarian Moltres. After you defeat her, you get the ability to learn your Pokemon the move Dark Hole, an incredibly overpowered move that's just in Radical Red, has 100 base power, and has a 50% chance of putting the opponent to sleep. You also may remember the Dunsparce cave where the guy starts digging, and eventually he'll find this place with a grass patch and some Dunsparce in it. Well, here it's been replaced with different Pokemon like a Sevian Clauncher, that's a bug dark type, and also Hisuian Gudra, Samurott, Sandaconda, and Corviknight. We then start the main storyline, which is looking for Lorelei on the 3rd island, but of course, in order to get to her, you have to get through a biker gang. And this is by far one of the hardest gauntlets I've ever seen in a Pokemon ROM hack. You need to face 4 bikers back to back, and they all have more than 3 Pokemon, and you can't heal. So you better build a team that can take him on. I personally went with Melmetal, Landorus, Glastrier, Kingambit, Gengar, and Heatran. Once chased away, the townspeople will give you a Steelium Z as a reward. Once you go to the following round, you'll find a couple more Sevian forms like Delmise, Milotic, and Mantine, but which one has been your favorite so far? And now normally you have to go to Berry Forest and save the girl from a Hypno that tries to kidnap her. Well, now it's been changed into the Berry Forest Challenge. You have to complete a maze of trainers and things blocking your way. Once you defeat a trainer, one of the pathways will open up, and ultimately when all the trainers have been defeated, you get greeted with this. The same cutscene with Lorelei, only this time it's Mew who's trying to attack her. But weirdly enough, you can't capture this Mew, so you have to take it out. The little girl quickly realizes that she shouldn't have been afraid of such a cute Pokemon and even gives you the Cynium Z as a reward. You then bring her back to her dad, who thanks you for saving his daughter and tells you a story about how Mew used to always rule and hide in that forest, and if we maybe bring a Mewtwo over there, something might happen. And I certainly kept that in mind, so I went to Cerulean Cave, but first went to the raid den there to capture all of the Ultra Beasts, including Buzzwole, Kartana, Nihilego, Stackanackle Tackle, you know, the whole shebang. And then went down back to the deepest part where we had our showdown with Giovanni and capture Mewtwo. I'm glad he finally thinks that we're worthy, and it's time for us to bring him to that forest. Upon entering, Mewtwo immediately feels some kind of presence and tells me that I should take it to Mew. So we go all the way to the back and see the same old man standing side by side with Mew. He's the gatekeeper and his duty has always been to guard Mew. But now they were looking for a destined trainer that was meant to take Mew under their wing, and they think it might be me. But before they can be 100% sure, we have to battle them. And if we can defeat them, Mew is ours for the capture. And this man had an insane team of Meloetta, Mew itself, Mega Kingler, Sevian Zebstrika, and Namorous in its turtle form, and even the Pokemon Devil, Giratina. I did, however, have a Mewtwo and other legendaries by my side that made this fight a little easier than it should have been, but I'm glad they finally accepted me as the chosen one. Once the old man says his goodbyes to Mew, we decide to capture it, and so Mewtwo is satisfied because now he finally knows where his origin came from. On my way out, I also captured a Sevian Nimble and Carnivine, and I went back to the Safari Zone to grab Galarian Moltres. I had also collected more shards, which I converted into more starter Pokemon, and even though I still hadn't gotten all of them after these hatched, I was very close. But before I would hunt for more shards, I checked my boxes, and there was a ton of Pokemon in there. Over 12 boxes full, and almost half of them hadn't been evolved yet. So that was my next objective. I had to evolve every Pokemon in my possession, whether it being through level up, friendship, stones, other evolutionary items. It had to be done. This took me several hours to accomplish, but the results were worth it, as we now have a Pokédex total of 781 with a time played of almost 20 hours. My next course of action was going through every single route again and seeing if I had missed something in day or night cycles. This actually led me to Cycling Road, which was a route I had never explored before. I actually managed to grab a ton of Pokemon here like Dracozolt, Turtonator, Grumpig, and Seviper. I found the fossil Pokemon Kabutops and Omastar right on the route beneath it, and then headed to the Seafoam Islands again, where I had to race an Alolan Sandshrew with my bike through a little maze, and if I manage to arrive before him, he will open up a new area with more Pokemon to capture. But also an incredibly hard battle with the legendary leader, Price. He's here to guard something, and if you manage to defeat him, we get to capture it. So he has a pretty cool team with multiple legendaries, multiple mega Pokemon, which is illegal by the way, and even a Sevian form of Wishiwashi, which is a Dragon Ghost type. Once you get through his Kyurem White though, you'll have the ability to surf and see the god of the sea laying low here. And so we trap it in our tiny little ball and add yet another powerhouse to my team. Now I feel like I've gotten enough legendaries to go back to Island 1 and start grinding out those battle points so I can get that Cosmog. A daunting process that took me over 3 hours to complete, and honestly, these were all battles we've already seen before, so I don't really think there is any point in showing you guys. But I also decided to not only get the Cosmog, I also wanted to get the Necrozmarizer. This allows you to fuse Solgaleo and Lunala with Necrozma, which is something I will definitely be doing later. We can now leave the islands alone because we've basically done everything they have to offer and go back to the mainland to do some legendary hunting inside raid dens. On Route 16, for example, we got ourselves a Petulant, Zygarde, and Diancie. In Rock Tunnel, we have Iron Crown, Iron Leaves, and Iron Boulder. At the Seafoam Islands, we get a Tapu Fini, Kyurem, and Manaphy. On Route 10, we have Mesprit, and in the power plant, Tapu Koko and Zeraora. Now that we've captured Mew, and Namorous is also roaming around the region, so after finding that, putting it to sleep and capturing it, we went back to the power plant, and when you exit it, there's this new cave with more secrets inside. Faulkner is here also, looking for a new legendary that's been spotted around here, and if we manage to beat him in a battle, we can go look for it ourselves. So we knock all of his flying type Pokemon out of the sky with King Ambit's Sucker Punch, and even get the Flyinium Z and Gracidia Flower to let Shaman change forms. I quickly found out that there was another puzzle waiting for me, as there was string boulders that needed to be put on these pressure plates. Once all of them are in order, you open up the passage to the legendary Pokemon Mergirna. There wasn't much else in this cave, so I decided to check up on my Pokédex total, which is now at 846 with a time played of almost 25 hours. We have under 200 more Pokemon to go, so we might actually complete this in under 30 hours, which would be amazing. Our next legendary location was in the Pokemon Tower, however, where you can now go to the top where Mr. Fuji is normally being held hostage, and there is another set of stairs that lead you to a room full of Gengar. You have to try and traverse these without them seeing you, and if you get past them, you still need to do 3 more gauntlet battles before facing Morty, who then grants you access to Marshadow. He has a very decent team of a Mimikyu with a Z move, a Marshadow himself, Silvally, Mega Gengar, and even Urshifu. Once he's defeated, we grab our Ghostium Z and Marshadow and head out of there. I grabbed my last couple of legendaries from some of the raid dens that I forgot to check, like the one in Mount Moon who had all the Regis inside, and the one in Viridian Forest who held Zarude, Fluttermane, Tapu Bulu, and Shaman. Now that is all the legendary Pokemon that are available in the entire Kanto region, but there is a list of codes you can give in at the Mystery Gift Lady at the Pokemon Center, so you can also get all the other ones who don't have a location yet, like Dialga, Palkia. The only 2 legendaries that are not available in the game are Arceus and Eternatus. Besides these, there was still a decent amount of Pokemon for me to get though, so I started breeding. There is a ton of Pokemon not available unless you breed for them, like Azurill, Wynot, and all the other baby Pokemon, but also first stages like Duskull, who only show up as their final evolutions in the wild. I also had to breed a ton of Eevees so I could get all the Eeveelutions, and went shard hunting so I could get all the other starter eggs I hadn't gotten yet. Once those were finished hatching and evolving, I grabbed a couple of Pokemon from the game corner like Rotom and some first stage evolutions, and with one last trade I got myself a Mimikyu, which brought me up to 1,023 Pokemon, and scoured the internet for cheat codes for Eternatus and Arceus, because otherwise we would never be able to get them. After spawning them in Victory Road and capturing both of these godlike creatures, my Pokédex of 1,025 Pokemon was finally completed. I then made this team and decided to challenge the Pokemon League again, After totally walloping them and blowing the entire building off planet Earth, Bob finally kneeled down to me as the most legendary trainer of all time. After my victory, I went to Celadon City to pick up my certificate of Pokemon Master and saw that I had even reached the 3-star trainer card. All of my work had been rewarded. But there was still one man I needed to impress, so I went to Professor Oak, and even though he said that I completed his dream, he still wanted one last battle to see if we could stand up to the man that teaches it all to us. I wanted to go with the team I had used the most, so I started off with Mewtwo and took down his Mega Pidgeot with a single Psy Strike. Little did I know that he had more Megas waiting in the back when Blastoise hit the field. I hit another Psy Strike, but it wasn't enough. So once Mewtwo was defeated, King Ambit had to come in with the Sucker Punch. And while Machamp looked like a decent matchup, my Necrozma said differently once it hit it with a Prismatic Laser. My Mega Charizard proceeded to make KFC out of his Electric Bird, and Ancient powered his Fiery Dog. With the final Pokemon being Nidoking, we used one last Flamethrower to win the most iconic battle with the most iconic Pokemon. And so Professor Oak smiles at me and says, "Kid, you've really completed it all." And that was my journey of how I 100%ed Pokemon Radical Red. A huge thank you to you for watching this video all the way through, and I also of course want to thank the sponsor of today's video, War Thunder, once again. Don't forget to download with the links in the description, and ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you all in the next one.